Hey there, thanks for joining me on this journey of joy, grief, and authenticity. My name is Hilarie Houghton, and today we are in the heat of the summer in Dallas, Texas, and it is so hot outside. And I'm recording this at a little different time of day, so the lighting is the sun is intense, so I'm trying to tame it down a little bit, but it's a little distracting. So if you see a lot of sparkling lights, it's that brilliant Texas sun. In this episode, I want to address a question that my husband and I get asked a lot, and we don't really know how to respond. And it's the question is, do you have kids? And this is a very light, small talk kind of question. And we get it a lot. And it doesn't seem like a real big deal to most people. In fact, most people probably would love to be asked that question. But for us, it's challenging. And I'm sure for a lot of other parents who have lost a child, it can be really challenging to figure out how to answer this question. If you acknowledge your deceased child, if we were to acknowledge Hollis and explain our scenario, then you feel like a Debbie Downer. But if you don't acknowledge them, you feel guilty because you love your kid and you miss them, and truly you want the world to know about them and know that they existed and to help you remember them, to help them be remembered, period. Questions like this seem so harmless on the surface, but it can just be really difficult to answer. And I'd be really interested in hearing from other parents or just people who have learned some responses on that and what they think, ideas that they have on how to respond to this question. Obviously, you can be really upfront with people, and you can tell people exactly what your story is. But it takes time, and sometimes you don't have a lot of time to tell your story, and it's not always the setting for that. And so I struggle with that a little bit. But at the same time, I have been known to share Hollis's story in the most uncomfortable situations purely out of my love for her. I'll never forget the first time I was asked this question after Hollis came into our lives. And it was a couple months after she died, and we were in a friend's backyard in our neighborhood, and it was a backyard concert, and it was between sets, and there were people we didn't know that lived nearby, and so we were making some small talk, and it was a new mother, and she had left her baby at home for the first time, and so they were kind of anxious and wondering how things were going, and it was her daughter probably would have been Hollis's age, actually. I'm just now realizing that. And she asked if we had kids, and I didn't know how to respond. So at first my response was silence. And then I believe I said no, or no, not right now, or something like that. And my friend Teresa was standing next to me, I believe, and she was really sweet. I knew that with Teresa there, she wasn't going to judge what I said, but sometimes that's a difficult situation when you have somebody with you who knows your story, and you're wondering, is there the best way to respond to this? How do I do it? And in some scenarios, I even find myself wanting to turn and be like, can you take this one? Can you tell the story for us? But in that instance, I just truly had not anticipated that question at all. So I will say that probably the answer that I'm most comfortable with at this point in our life is saying, when people ask if we have kids, to just say, not currently. Because that the person can take that in a bunch of different ways, but it is a true statement. But sometimes I just bust out with Hollis's story, and you might be on the elevator with me when it happens, and it might be 9 seconds that shock you, but I've been very fortunate to have some really beautiful people walk through our lives and get to hear that story, and that have reacted very graciously and thanked me for sharing her story. And in some instances, even done the really beautiful thing of asking what her name was. And that has always been the best way somebody could respond. So to sum it up, really, I wouldn't hesitate to ask somebody if they have kids or how many kids they have, because I think it's a perfectly natural question and it can lead to some really great conversations. But I would also advise that if you get a response that you weren't expecting and it's deep and it's filled with grief, lean into that conversation and do your best to encourage that parent to talk, and as much as they're comfortable saying, and to respect that conversation, and to maybe, if you feel like you can, ask that child's name so that you can remember them too. And I think for me, that's been the biggest blessing. So that's a wrap for today. Thanks for joining me on this journey of joy, grief, and authenticity.